Okay,
12?
roll camera.
Yeah. 12 Bravo, take 2, marker.
Action.
And action.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is Friday, February the 26th, 2021, 12:08 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm coming to you live from the VoiceMann Studios in Toronto, Canada. This is episode 148 of McRae Live, and today we are talking Pet Sematary and Paranormal Activity. Pet Sematary and Paranormal Activity. So the reason why I wanted to talk about this today is because it came to my attention yesterday. Some of you may know, some of you may not. Paramount Studios, of course, is getting into the streaming game. I mean, I find it somehow ironically hilarious how everybody was canceling their cable bills because they were too expensive, and now it's going to cost you $150 to have all the streaming services. Oh, the irony. Now, of course, you could also say, well, because there's nothing really good on cable anymore anyway, which is pretty true, actually. Cable's dying, unless you're watching cable news, maybe. You know, I don't know. But certainly, and it's kind of sad because, I mean, at least for somebody, look, if you're younger than me, if you're 25 years old, you couldn't care less because you grew up in the digital age. But if you're in your 40s like me, you remember a time when, of course, cable was all there was. And when you watched a show, you would watch a show and you had to wait till the next week to watch it. And although there is advantages to binging and all that, I gotta say, there's something nice about that anticipation, that buildup of, you know, oh my God, oh no, I gotta wait another week to watch it. It was fun. It was fun. It was an era. You can't explain it. You had to be there. And it was fun. But cable is certainly not what it used to be. And of course, the streaming services now, Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, HBO Max, Peacock, Paramount Plus, Disney Plus, you know, is now getting into the game, or Paramount Plus, I should say. Paramount is getting into the game with a show, with a streaming service called Paramount Plus. I believe it launches next month. I believe March, I think. And I saw that they are, of course, they have about 2,500 titles already, movies, for their library, which is great. I think that's fantastic. You have 2,500 movies already, which some of the other streaming services didn't launch. They may have that now, but they didn't launch with nearly that much. So it's, and Paramount, I mean, regardless of whether they've, Paramount is one of the legendary studios in the history of motion pictures. I mean, it's Paramount, it's Warner Brothers, it's Universal, it's, used to be Fox, 20th Century Fox. Actually, 20th Century Fox used to be just 20th Century Studios, I believe, years and years ago before Fox bought it out. So they've just gone back to what they always were. Of course, Disney. But the big players way back in the golden age of cinema was your Universal, your Warner Brothers, and your Paramount. And I mean, it's kind of cool to see Paramount get into the game. Paramount, of course, has legendary titles, and it's going to be cool to see what they have. But they're also, of course, wanting to produce, naturally, makes sense if you want to compete, original content that just goes to their streaming service. The streaming wars have begun, and it's only going to get worse or better depending on how you look at it. And at the end of the day, most people, well, I'm not going to say most people, but most of us movie fans are probably going to have 6 or 7 or 8 different streaming services, which may be fine because the content that you're getting, the quality of the content that you're getting is better than anything that you're getting on cable. So you don't necessarily mind dishing out $100 and something a month for 7 different streaming services because the quality is there. I just find it ironic that cable's too expensive, and here we are paying an arm and a leg for all these services. But that being said, they want to produce original content, and naturally, and one of the things they want to do, of course, is produce movies, naturally. And two of the movies they announced is a Pet Sematary Prequel and a Paranormal Activity sequel. Now, I'm a big fan of the 1989 Paranormal Activity. 1989 Pet Sematary, I'm a big fan. Most horror fans, I think, generally like the 1989 Pet Sematary. I mean, I would probably say it's one of the better Stephen King adaptations. I don't think it's a great horror movie, although there are some horror fans out there that will absolutely defend it until they, hit the grave, no pun intended, in the sense that it is a great horror movie. I don't know if it's a great horror movie, but it certainly is a good horror movie, and it's one of the better 80s horror movies, one of the better late 80s horror movies, and certainly one of the better Stephen King adaptations. Because Stephen King movies, maybe they've been a little better here or there, maybe the last few years or so, but certainly there was a time where Stephen King movies, it wasn't a good thing. It wasn't a good thing. It was very rare in terms of horror movies. Now, you have Stand By Me, you have The Shawshank Redemption, you have The Green Mile, you have there was a couple other ones too, that are not horror movies that have become some of the greatest movies in the history of film. But it was the horror side of Stephen King adaptations that usually fell flat, especially when we're talking about the late 80s, early 90s with movies like, The Langoliers and which I actually quite like the premise of that. But there was a lot of TV movies that came out and a lot of, anyways, if you're old enough to remember, you know what I'm talking about. So, but Pet Sematary is one of those movies that was pretty good. It was pretty good. I enjoyed it. And of course, they did there was a sequel, of course, I think with Edward Furlong, if I'm not mistaken, there was a sequel, which is fucking hilarious. Which I never saw. And then, of course, there's the remake from 2019. So there's the remake from 2019. Now, I read this article from Variety, and Variety doesn't mention this, but the website /film.com, which I understand is not one of the big trades, but it certainly is a site that's been around for quite some time. And I wouldn't imagine this is incorrect coming from /film. This is not like Jimmy Bob's movie blog. And again, that doesn't mean that Jimmy Bob's movie blog can't be right, but we're talking about probability. So /film has been around for a while, and they say this, but Variety doesn't. Now, just because Variety doesn't say this doesn't mean that /film was incorrect. It may have been information that they just consciously decided to leave out. But I find it interesting, and we'll get to it in a second here. I'm going to try to go over to my other screen in a moment and hopefully the audio will be fine. I did another test today, and there was no popping. So we'll see, but I know the chat room will definitely let me know once I move over to the other screen if there is popping. But I find this interesting because, listen, Paranormal Activity, I actually didn't mind the first Paranormal Activity. I'm actually, believe it or not, I don't want to say I'm a big fan of found footage. Not that Paranormal Activity's found footage necessarily. It's more like security camera type stuff. But it's a cousin. It's a close cousin to the found footage genre, at least it used to be. I actually think the found footage genre, now hear me out when I say this, it is a gigantic pile of steaming dog shit. Okay? However, the unfortunate part about it is because it's so saturated and it's done mostly incorrectly, in my estimation. I think the found footage genre, unfortunately, there's a lot of potential with it to make it really scary. I don't mean Hollywood produced scary, which is usually what ends up happening, is that found footage films are usually overly produced. And unless there is a reason to have a produced angle to it. And what do I mean by overly produced? Well, I mean, I'm talking about the sound design being too synthetically created. You know, I can tell that this is sound design. You know, this doesn't sound necessarily like it's in the environment it's supposed to be in. One of the issues I had with the 2016 Blair Witch sequel was that it was overly produced. I didn't believe that these sounds were coming from the environment that they were in. It sounded like this was sound designed in a studio. And when you want to make me believe that this is organically happening in the environment, there has to be a level of rawness to it. Now, obviously, you need to professionally mix and master your film. Naturally, I get that. But there's got to be a sense of believability to the environment, a sense of rawness. It's pretty much what made the Blair Witch Project very successful, is its rawness, its grittiness. Now, I'm not saying that every found footage film has to be as raw as that, but I find with a lot of found footage movies I watch, it's too produced, and it doesn't feel like I'm watching found footage anymore. There's a point where it feels like that, but then there's a threshold that they usually cross. But I think it's an unfortunate thing. I think the first Paranormal Activity was all right. I actually enjoyed its sequel, believe it or not. I went to the theater to see its sequel in 2010 or 2011 or something like that, Paranormal Activity 2. I actually enjoyed that movie because, again, they were not overly produced. There wasn't anything crazy going on. You know, I think once you start to, the sound mix becomes overly produced, the visuals become the visuals become too sensational. You know, people flying through trees in the air. Oh my God, I got that on camera. It doesn't have the same impact that I think it would have maybe 25 or 30 years ago, because I can replicate that in my home studio in half an hour. Obviously, it would take me longer than half an hour. But the point I'm making is that it's not like it was 25 years ago. I mean, everybody these days has After Effects at their fingertips. I mean, it's very difficult to watch videos on social media and you know, figure out whether or not, is this real? Is this not? Because it's so easily to digitally recreate now. You know, I mean, kids are making movies that I only dreamed of doing 25 years ago. It's insane what you guys have at your fingertips now. I mean, we were shooting on VHS and editing VCR to VCR. I mean, or sometimes we'd edit in camera. We'd have to roll back and make sure we're at the, I mean, it was insane. We just didn't have it now, right? So I like the idea of found footage, and I like the idea of what Paranormal Activity brought, but I think it's become too saturated, overly produced, and I've totally lost interest. I checked out after the second movie. I just don't give a fuck anymore. It's too saturated. It's too saturated, overly produced. I don't believe this is found footage anymore. And it's sort of beyond that threshold now anyway. So I don't care about a Paranormal Activity sequel. And you might be asking yourself, well, why are they making one then? Because you guys watch them. Because you watch them. You go to see it. You rent it. You watch it. That's why they make it. And I'm not here to say that, you know, as a filmmaker myself, I certainly don't want people to not watch my movies. You know, you have to make up your own mind. I would never tell somebody to not watch a movie. I wouldn't do that. I would tell them that, well, I didn't enjoy it. I thought it was a steaming pile of dog crap, or I didn't like it, or it was hit and miss for me, or whatever the case is. But you got to watch it for yourself and make up your own mind. Because the artists who created the art deserve that. They deserve you to watch their movie. But it's your choice whether you want to or not. I would never tell you not to do that. Because I don't think that's right. I don't think that's fair. Don't ever fucking watch that. No, don't you watch that. Like, who am I to say that? Maybe you're going to fucking love it, right? But the Paranormal Activity, the reason why they make these movies is because, well, they're cheap to make, relatively speaking. They're cheap to make. Horror movies are always cheap to make. And you could say to yourself, but sometimes horror movies cost $40, $50 million. Yes, sometimes they do. But when we've passed the threshold of what the average, you know, I mean, we're in the era now where movies are generally 100 plus to make. Horror movies are still the cheapest movies to make and the most fun and get a big return if they're pretty good. So that's why they make them, folks, is because you go see them or you rent them or you stream them because you can't help yourself because you're a horror fan. That's why. Whether they're good. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I see people on here or in my day-to-day that really don't care. That they don't care whether a movie's good or not. They just want to see a horror movie. They like watching horror movies. And they hope it's good, but, you know, well, that's why they keep making them. So Pet Sematary, this prequel to Pet Sematary, is, you know, why? Well, because the Pet Sematary from 2019 made over $100 million at the box office, and it cost $20 million to make. Now, you may not have liked it. You probably didn't. But it made money. Made money. What are the totals? The totals here, and here's something that you have to keep in mind too. The Paranormal Activity franchise, by the way. The Paranormal Activity franchise, this may shock some of you, is almost $1 billion franchise. Did you know that? The Paranormal Activity franchise, its total box office, Paranormal Activity 1 through 6, I guess. We have Paranormal Activity 2, 3, 4, and then they got rid of the numbers, and we have the marked ones and the Ghost Dimension. So there's 6 of them. Last one was 2015. The total box office, the total worldwide box office for the Paranormal Activity films, ladies and gentlemen, is $890 million. To be exact, $890,533,646 million. You watch them. And you continue to watch them. Now, the North America interest has declined, but it's still doing fairly well overseas. And the budgets are cheap. The first Paranormal Activity we know was $15,000. The second was $3 million. The third was $5 million. The fourth was $5 million. The fifth was $5 million. The sixth was $10 million. These movies are raking in the dough. Raking in the dough. It's nearly $1 billion. I bet you never thought that. Paranormal Activity is nearly $1 billion franchise. Oh yeah. And with this second one, with this seventh one going to Paramount Plus, it probably will become one. If you want it to stop, don't support it. It's that simple. I'm not saying don't support it. I'm just saying if you don't care about it, you don't want to say, well, then don't watch it. That's how you fight back. The only way you fight back in a business that is all about making money is to stop the flow of money. That's just how it goes. So don't rent it. Don't watch it when it goes to streaming. It's that simple. However, if you're like, no, I want to watch it. Well, then watch it. Watch it. Support it. I mean, knock yourself out. I'm just saying that's how you do it. So let's move over to the other screen. Let's hope, and I want my viewers to let me know if the audio is okay. So we're gonna move over to the other screen here. So you guys let me know if the audio is okay. I believe the audio should be okay. I tested it and it was okay at first yesterday too, and then it started to pop. But let's hope. I've restarted my computer. I've restarted the software and everything since then. So let's hope that this works okay. You guys let me know. I'll wait for the chat to let me know that everything's okay. Chat room, how do I sound? Frank, society is amazed by self-flushing toilets and call it... That is true. That is very, very true, Frank. You are correct. Audio is fine. Okay, thank you very much, guys. Thank you. And we'll just hope that this continues to be okay. So this is from Variety. Paranormal Activity sequel, Pet Sematary. Oh, you know what? My mistake. I was about to say, I didn't read the headline carefully enough. I was about to say that Slash Film mentioned this one thing that Variety didn't, but Variety did mention it. They mentioned it in their headline. I don't believe they mentioned it in the body of their article. So my mistake. They did mention this thing that Slash Film mentioned. And that is, of course, that this is a prequel. Oh, excuse me. No, wait a minute. I read that wrong. I got to get my glasses. I totally messed this up again. I got to bring my glasses in here. I messed this up again. That says Paranormal Activity, not Pet Sematary. Okay, so cancel what I just said, and let's go back to what I said before, which I'll bring up here in a second. So Paranormal Activity sequel, Pet Sematary Prequel, debuting on Paramount Plus. Let's read this thing before I back myself even further into the wall. A sequel to Paranormal Activity and a prequel to Pet Sematary will debut on Paramount Plus. In addition, The In-Between, a supernatural thriller from Chum Scrubber? All right. And The Face of Love director, I guess it's Poisson? It's not Poison. Posen maybe, will also premiere on the new streaming service. The films were developed by Paramount Plus, the studio's genre label. Paramount is looking to produce between 4 to 6 films for the streaming service annually. That means yearly, folks. Paramount Plus was unveiled to investors on Wednesday and will make its debut in March. So it is March. It's popping? Is it? Oh, that's too bad. I don't know why it does that. Thanks for letting me know, guys. Thanks for letting me know. I don't know why it does that. That's so strange. It'll start off okay, and then it doesn't. Maybe what I'm going to have to do, I think what I'm going to have to do for the next show is I will get rid of the plugins for that screen and just rebuild the screen from scratch again, and we should be okay. So I appreciate you guys saying that. Very much. I appreciate you guys saying that. It's frustrating, but let me go over here to the screen here and and I'll read the article from here. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you guys doing that, of course. All right, here we go. So I'll read it from this screen. That's too bad. It just might be an issue where I just have to completely rebuild the screen over again. Okay, here we go. So a sequel to Paranormal Activity and a prequel to Pet Sematary. Oh, I read all that. Paramount Plus launching in March. Okay, it also comes as the streaming wars are heating up and media companies are looking to topple Netflix, Disney, Warner Media, Apple, and Comcast have all unveiled streaming services in recent months, while Viacom CBS is rebranding CBS All Access as Paramount Plus. Paranormal Activity will be a new unexpected chapter. What does that mean? Well, I think this is what it means. Now, folks, you have to let me know something. Okay? I need you guys to let me know something. All right? I need you guys to let me know something. Let me know. Have all the Paranormal Activity films been all found footage, quote unquote, like video cam, security camera, through the computer, Skype, Zoom, whatever it is, because I've only seen like the first 2 or 3. So let me know, folks. Have the vast majority of or all of them, have they been that type of movie? Scoots McAvoy, Dave, are you Irish? I am not. Have they been that kind of film? Yes, they all have been. Yes. Okay. Well, when I read this and I see Paranormal Activity, where am I here? I lost you guys again. Here we go. When I see Paranormal Activity will be a new unexpected chapter in the long-running horror series, the studio said, that makes me think that maybe they are eliminating that. Why would it be unexpected? What the fuck could there possibly be unexpected about Paranormal Activity's 7th installment? What the hell is going to be unexpected about Paranormal Activity's, maybe now they're switching it up and it will no longer be found footage, security camera, that style, okay? And now it will be more of a live action narrative, more just, they get rid of that and it's more just a regular movie, if you will. Well, that would be new to that franchise, possibly unexpected if you're a fan of all the movies, right? It certainly breaks with tradition and breaks the pattern. So that's the only thing I can think of beyond that. The film was directed by Will Eubank, maybe? Underwater, never heard of it. From a script by Christopher Landon, Jason Blum, the Blumhouse maestro behind Get Out and Ma, will produce, along with Oren Peli, is that how you say that? I don't fucking know. The director of the first film. Oh, right, him, the director of the first film. So he's helping to produce. Whatever. Okay, whatever. Here we go. On to Pet Sematary. Pet Sematary is an origin story to the Stephen King yarn about the dangers of bringing back your dogs, cats, and other furry friends from the great beyond. That is what the Pet Sematary prequel is. The Pet Sematary prequel is a prequel to the Stephen King. Excuse me, let me try that again. I was paying attention to the chat. Pet Sematary is an origin story to the Stephen King yarn about the dangers of bringing back your dogs, cats, and other friends from the great beyond. Lorenzo di Bonaventura, I believe, Transformers, will produce the movie from a script by Jeff Buhler, I think is how you say that. Looks like it could be Bueller, but it's not. I think it's Buhler. All right, so now when I go over to Slash Film says this. The upcoming Paranormal Activity movie is headed right to Paramount Plus, okay? And it has company, a new Pet Sematary film, which will serve as a prequel to the 2019 adaptation of Stephen King's horror classic. Now, that's information that was not in the Variety article. That was the information I was talking about that I read the headline and I was like, oh, it is there. Oh, no, it's not there. And I'm having a brain fart because I don't have my glasses on. So that's information that I didn't see anywhere in the Variety article. It's not a prequel to the 1989 movie, according to Slash Film. It's a prequel to the 2019 movie. Does that make you excited? Does that make you more or less excited knowing that information? And if that information is in fact true, I have no reason to believe that it's not. But does that make you more excited or less excited? I have a feeling that the chat room will be less excited about that. Less excited about that. Less excited. Less excited. So, I don't know. What do you guys think? What do you guys think? What exactly do you want? Do you care about this? Bring up the article again. Where are you guys? Oh, there we are. Is this something you care about? Would it make you feel better if it was think about this. Would it make you feel better if this was a prequel to the original movie? And why would it make you feel better? Because you like that movie better? But isn't that more of a reason to not have a prequel to the 1989 film? The same people are involved. The same script has been written. The same director, same producer going to Paramount Plus. The only thing that changes, the only information that changes is that now it's a prequel to the 89 movie instead of the 2019 film. That wouldn't make me more excited. I like the 89 movie better. It's one of my favorite 80s horror movies of all time. But I don't think that would make me more excited. It would make me maybe even more nervous because now they're connecting the canon to the 89 movie and they have the opportunity now to fuck up the 89 movie. If you want to fuck up the 2019 film all you want, knock yourself out. Knock yourself out. I mean, really. Do you know what I mean? What is the chat room saying? Less. Chat room saying less. Darren Sand says, it would be great if they lost the found footage genre. I see what you did there with the play on words. You know what? And I kind of agree, Darren, because I've lost all real sort of, I think the found footage genre, believe it or not, and I realize I may be alone in this, there's a lot of untapped potential, I think, that's there. Unfortunately, it's never utilized. Rarely, I'll say rarely. It's rarely, very rarely utilized correctly. And therefore, it now has a stigma attached to it. And people roll their eyes when they realize a movie's found footage. And that's so unfortunate, because when done right, it can be a very, in the horror genre, when done right, can be incredibly effective, but it rarely is. And that's unfortunate. I do agree with that. Might as well just stop, Stop while you have never been ahead, really. So some people in the chat here are so what is it? So Duke Fleet says, meh. Brandon Barry says, less excited. Tom Ungurian says, it's a prequel to the 18 film, the 19 film. Hell no. Well, that's according to Slash Film. Now, that information, again, is not in the Variety article. That doesn't mean Slash Film is wrong. Slash Film is, it's not like they're new to the block. They've been around for a while. I don't imagine they would write that just on a whim and assuming. Maybe they did. I don't know. So this information stands to be corrected. But if it is a prequel to the 2019 film, you're asking yourself, why did they do that? Because it made money. And because again, the business model isn't quite there yet, but they can probably shoot it for cheap, $10 million and make that back. And they don't have to pay the theater vendor. They don't have to pay the theaters. They don't have to pay the costs of all that. That is where they're going. That's eventually a very attractive. Again, the business model isn't there yet, especially for the films that cost $250 million to make. We live in a world now where you have to make $1 billion to just be successful. Relatively speaking, right? If your production budget is $250 million, you can bet that your marketing budget is that. So to break even, you got to make $500 or $700 million at the box office, and then you're only in the win column when you get close to $1 billion. We're living in an era now where a lot of these movies you love, these tentpole films, these big blockbuster movies I'm talking about, your Star Wars, your Marvel, your superhero, have to be $1 billion movies. But horror movies don't. Horror movies don't, especially when there's not an expectation to it. See, Halloween Kills they'd love to release that thing in theaters because the first one made $250 million at the box office, highest grossing slasher in motion picture history. But it doesn't have to make that much to be successful on any measure. So Pet Sematary, a prequel to Pet Sematary, make it for $10 million, put it to streaming. It's a win-win, and you'll watch it because the stats show that you'll watch it. You'll watch it. You will. Maybe you personally won't, but the vast majority of people will, because they can't not. They're horror fans. They have to watch everything. See, I have a different side to that. There's a lot of horror movies that you've seen recently that I've never seen. I've never seen The Nun. I don't care. It looked like dog shit when I saw the trailer, so I didn't want to see it. I haven't seen Slender Man. I don't care. It looked like dog shit, and I didn't want to see it. And you know what? I was right, because all you tell me it's dog shit. Oh, well, I was right. Well, it's a good thing I saved myself $10. I don't need to see it. Just because I'm a horror fan, just because you're a fan of something doesn't mean that you have to see everything. And if you don't see everything, that means you're not a fan. No, it means you have standards. And it means that when you look at something, you go, you know what? That doesn't appeal to me. It doesn't appeal to me. So I don't want to bother seeing that. I want to watch something that piques my interest. That I go, oh, that looks, oh. And most of the horror movies that you see advertised, they look like ass. Now, if you're a movie reviewer, like a Cody Leach or a Lee McCoy or the guys from Wham or something, yeah, that's a bit different, because you have viewers, there's an expectation that you're going to watch these movies, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and you got to watch it, right? I guarantee you there are probably some movies that Cody and the guys from Wham or whoever probably see the trailer for and go, oh God, I gotta fucking watch that now. They don't want to watch it, but they know that you guys want to know what they think of it. Well, see, I'm not a movie reviewer. It's not what this channel's about. So there isn't that expectation. And that's part of the reason why I didn't I didn't make this channel about that, is because I don't want to watch everything that comes out, because most stuff looks like ass. And that doesn't mean I'm not a fan of horror. That means that I have standards, that there are certain things that just don't appeal to me. And everybody has different levels of standards. Everybody has different thresholds. There are people that are huge fans that will watch everything. There are people that are huge fans that are more picky, right? We're all fans. We're all fans. But the Pet Sematary prequel to the 2019 film, it's going to, as the article says here from Variety, it says the Pet Sematary is an origin story to the Stephen King yarn about the dangers of bringing back your dogs, cats, and other furry friends from the great beyond. Well, okay, but we saw that in the 2019 film. We saw that in the 1989 film. What's-his-face gives great exposition about the whole thing, what he's done, what you could do, why maybe you'd want to do it, and why you shouldn't do it. There's a risk, right? There's a risk. And the whole idea is bringing back your pet, not your son, not a human being. The lead in Pet Sematary crosses that threshold. Well, I know everything I need to know about Pet Sematary. Now, for those of you that are big Stephen King fans, and you can let me know in the chat room right now, is there a prequel book that Stephen King has written? Let me know. Now, we know that as much as, and I understand that again, I haven't seen Dr. Sleep yet. It's not because I don't want to see it. I do want to see it. I just haven't gotten around to it, guys. I've just been far too busy. And unfortunately, Dr. Sleep is not a priority for me right now. There's a lot of other things that are on my table. But the good news is that I've heard great things about Dr. Sleep, which is great. That's really cool. Awesome. But let's go back to before Dr. Sleep came out. When I heard that they were doing a sequel to The Shining, as somebody who loves The Shining and all the psychological layers in that film, one of the greatest psychological horror movies ever made, in my estimation, it was blasphemous to even hear that they were doing a prequel to The Shining, or a sequel to The Shining. But I understand that it's based on a book written by the man himself. Well, but The Shining movie from 1980 there's very little in that movie that has anything from the original book anyway. It's very different. But I thought to myself, well, it's based on a sequel that the man himself wrote. So it's like, well, okay, I guess there's sort of a acceptance to that. There's almost like a free pass there where you kind of go, well, okay, I get it. But is there a prequel? Is there a book written by Stephen King? Corey Dean says there is a book. There is a book. Okay, there is a book. There is a book. And what is that book called? What is that book called? There is a prequel book written by Stephen King. It would have to, well, I don't know if it would have to be, but what is the book called? So Corey, are you telling me there is a book that is a prequel to Pet Sematary? What is the name of it? And who's written it? Is it Stephen King? Maybe I'm out to lunch. Oh, you mean Dr. Sleep? Well, I know that. That's what I'm talking about, folks. That's what I'm talking about. So nobody in the chat room is telling me there's a book, a prequel to Pet Sematary. And as far as I know, there isn't. There isn't. There isn't. Everything we need to know about Pet Sematary is in the Pet Sematary movie. And I'm talking about the one from 1989. I haven't seen the one from 2019. That might shock you. Well, Dave, what do you mean you haven't seen well, then how can you judge it? No, you're right. You're right. And it's a fair point. It's a fair point. That's why I don't say movies I haven't seen are dog shit. I say they looked like dog shit to me, and that's why I didn't see it. And others who have seen the movie come to me and say they're dog shit. So I go, oh, so there's a high probability then that if I were to watch the movie, I would also think it's dog shit. But that doesn't mean I would. Maybe I'd watch Pet Sematary 2019 and go, you know what? I really like this movie. I actually really like this movie. Maybe I would. Or maybe I would just, and folks, take my dog shit comment, with a grain of salt, right? Because there are degrees of dog shit, okay? You can put a little, small pile of dog poo on a plate and ask somebody to eat it. Or you can put a gigantic pile of dog shit on a pizza and ask somebody, it's still dog shit. I mean, you're still eating dog shit. Okay. I recognize there are degrees of what's, one is. I may watch Pet Sematary 2019 and go, yeah, it was okay. Right? There are degrees. There's levels to this kind of thing. But when I watched the trailer, it looked like a run-of-the-mill, something that didn't interest me, remake of an 89 classic. It's like, whatever. Just didn't look meh. And then others saw it and went, yeah, it's dog shit. It's like, yeah. But I would never tell you not to watch it. And I'm not saying the movie is because I haven't seen it. Right? See, I'm very level-headed about this kind of thing, folks. You have to be. You have to be in this world. I am not saying the 2019 Pet Sematary is dog shit because I don't know. I have not seen it. But it looked like, it didn't look appealing to me at all. And others tell me it's dog shit. So, if others have been like, now, reverse that with Dr. Sleep, right? I saw the trailer for Dr. Sleep and I was like, yeah, it looks like it might be, it might be interesting. I just haven't gotten around to seeing it. But the vast majority of people who've seen it have told me, oh, it's great. You'll love it. So now the probability goes up that I'll probably like it, right? If the vast majority of people are saying, yeah, it's actually pretty good, man, you got to watch it. Well, then I'll probably enjoy it, right? So we just have to keep that in mind. But I just don't understand the idea of a prequel to Pet Sematary. I mean, I understand it. I understand it. What is this about? Well, I'll tell you what it's about. It's probably going to be about, probably, what's his face? I forget the fucking guy's name now, but it's probably going to be about him, the next door neighbor, the old guy, the dead is better. It's probably going to be about him and how he came to see all this shit. But it's like, but we don't need that. We don't need that. We got everything we needed to know through exposition. So I'm not excited about it at all, but I'm relieved if Slash Film is right. I'm relieved that it's not a prequel to the 1989 movie and that it's a prequel to the 2019 film, And this should be a lesson for everybody out there because I think most horror fans that have seen the 2019 Pet Sematary, most of us here, and I'm not saying that they're Judd. Thank you. I was going to say Judge. Judd. That's right. I wanted to say Judge for some reason. Judge Reinhold. No. Judd. Thanks, Frank. Most people, I should know that. I'm having a brain fart. Most people, I think, are, yes, there is a 2013 Dr. Sleep book, but folks, I've said, I don't know. Yes, there is. I said from the very beginning that there's a book to Dr. Sleep, and that's why it almost feels more acceptable to do a sequel to it because you're basing it on the work of the artist himself. So it almost seems more. It doesn't feel as shoehorned in. It almost feels like there's ownership there. Then, right? If the artist himself is saying there's more to tell, maybe there is more to tell, right? If the artist themselves are saying there is more to tell, maybe there is more to tell. It doesn't mean there is, but I'm just saying that it feels a little more organic, not quite as shoehorned in than as opposed to some filmmaker who has nothing to do with the series coming along and writing a sequel for the sake of writing a sequel and keeping it going. That doesn't mean that the artists themselves don't also do that. Because they're trying to cash in on a property that got them, a lot of money back in the day and they're getting older and they're like, I'm going to write a sequel to The Shining. Why the fuck not? I mean, shit, that happens too. But it's more psychological, right? But I don't need to see that. And it's not to say it's going to be about Judd's life and how he came to be. But I don't understand what else it could be about. So again, are you guys more, first of all, is anybody in the chat room actually excited about this? And be honest and don't come down on people, folks. Not that I expect you would, because I I would like to believe that everybody in this chat room, although there are some people that get out of line every now and then. And when I mean out of line, I mean you're antagonistic unnecessarily. I would like to believe that people in the chat room, we can be mature about this. Maybe there is somebody right now who's watching. There's 135 people here. Maybe there's somebody who's watching that's afraid to say it because they're afraid that people are going to jump on them. And I want you to know that don't be afraid to say it. If you are excited or, you know, kind of really curious about a prequel to Pet Sematary, you know, even the 2019 movie, say it. Say it. Don't be afraid to say it. Don't be afraid to say it. Right? Kane B says, sounds fine to me. Maybe Kane, maybe you liked the 2019 film, right? Don't be afraid. It's okay. It's okay. But it is interesting, though, that it's not a prequel to the 1989 film. It's a prequel to the 2019 movie. I don't know. How do you guys feel about that? Comment below and let me know, folks. Comment below and let me know your thoughts on the Paranormal Activity sequel. What you think this new idea is. I mean, what did they say again? They said that Paranormal Activity has a new unexpected chapter. What do you think the new unexpected part is? Do you think they're getting rid of the found footage security camera style in the Paranormal Activity? I mean, that's sort of its identity, though, isn't it? I mean, that's part of its DNA. If you get rid of that, then what does Paranormal Activity become? But then again, to keep it fresh and exciting, you in a 7th installment, you likely do have to reinvent yourself to some degree. Or is it going to be a mixture of both? You know, what is this going to be? I don't know. Comment below and let me know your thoughts. Also, how do you feel about the Pet Sematary prequel? Do you feel less or more excited or relieved that it's a prequel to the 2019 film, according to Slash Film, and not the 1989 film? Comment below and let me know your thoughts on whether this is exciting to you, whether you like this, whether you don't like this. For me, I couldn't care less about either. And I think there are people out there that probably assume, and I can understand why, that there's a lot of things that I don't care about. I mean, on this channel, on this show, I tend to have topics where things are I tend to be always sort of, I don't want to say looking at the negative, but looking at sort of an angle of taking an angle of like, I just, and you would be right. I do. But I think that's primarily because there's a lot of stuff that keeps coming down the pipe that I'm just like, why? I don't understand this decision. You know, but I wanted to bring it but I like to bring it to your attention because sometimes I always hope that there is an angle that I can get behind. There's an angle that I get really excited about. You know, there's an angle I'm like, oh yes, I want to get excited about that. You know, unfortunately in the world of horror, it is very far and few between. There's a lot of horror movies. There are a lot of horror movies, folks. We know this. There are a lot of horror movies. But for me, if you want to call me highbrow, if you want to call me picky, if you want to call me, you know, whatever you want to, you know, elitist, which is not true, by the way, all this is not true. But if you want to peg me as somebody that's maybe too picky, that's fine. That's fine. I'll take too picky. I'll take that. But it's because I have higher standards. The stuff that used to entertain me when I was 5, you know, I'm 41. You know, I've grown, I've matured as a person. My standards have matured. It doesn't mean that I don't enjoy some of the B movie stuff and yeah, it's fun. It's fun. But I need more from my horror movies now. I need more than just the same thing over and over and over. It doesn't mean I'm not a fan. It doesn't mean you're not a fan if that's what you enjoy over and over. We're just two different horror fans that have two different thresholds of what we enjoy about the genre. But I see very little that I get excited about. You know, it's unfortunate, but it's true. You know, I see a lot of the same things. And there's reasons for that. There's reasons why studios and streaming services dish out the same things over and over again because you watch it, because you pay money to see it. They wouldn't do that. This is a business that's based around making money. They wouldn't be making another Paranormal Activity if the pattern didn't show that people watch it, if it didn't show that it's nearly $1 billion franchise? Because it's just bad business. You know? Even Pet Sematary 2019 made over $110 million at the box office. You know, it's crazy to think, but it's true. Anyways, yeah, comment below and let me know your thoughts, guys. Comment below and let me know your thoughts. But just remember that no matter what kind of a horror fan you are, whether you love all the things I hate or whether you hate all the things I love, you are welcome here. You are welcome to tell me about it, to teach me about your love. Maybe you'll get me to see it, see things from a certain angle that I didn't see before. And I'll be like, oh, I never thought of it like that. You know what? That's actually not bad. You are welcome here. Never be afraid to speak up. Never be afraid to speak up, because I want everybody in the chat room and in the comments section below to treat everybody with dignity and respect, and to respect everybody's love and belief, and love and love for what you love. And I want you to know that if you love every Paranormal Activity, if Paranormal Activity 6 is your favorite horror movie of all time, celebrate. I don't give a fuck. That's great. That's great. Just know that, okay? Don't be intimidated by my theatrics, okay? Just know that. All right, so let's go over to the chat room and see what you guys are saying. I don't believe any super chats came in, which is a good thing in the sense that I don't think I missed anything, which I did not. So let's go over to the chat room and see what you guys are saying. Let's just see what you guys are saying, my man. What do we got here? Jonathan McAuliffe. Apparently, there's talks of a Fast and Furious Transformers crossover, and it will happen in space. Just kidding. But I wouldn't be surprised if they did that. I wouldn't be surprised either if they did that, my man. I would not be surprised at all. I would not be surprised at all. I don't know. Aaron Anderson says that I need everyone to stop watching Blumhouse so he can stop ruining the horror genre. I don't think he's ruining the horror genre. He's actually... I think there are some Blumhouse films that have been released that I actually quite enjoy. I think he's done a very good job. But like anything, the more you throw at the wall, it's just becoming saturated now, right? And this should, again, open the eyes for a lot of people that this is about business. And that's what I said. I said in a video and in a tweet a few weeks ago, it's so important that fans begin to understand the kind of relationship that they're in with the studios. Because not that fans don't have a certain say, okay? But at the end of the day, this is a business, and you are in a business relationship with the studios. You're not dating them, okay? It's not a romantic relationship. They, at the end of the day, they couldn't care less what you think. They're going to do what they think is best for business based on a number of factors. And one of those factors may be fan nostalgia. Yep. And what fans are saying on Twitter and what they want. But it's not based solely around that. It's based around the patterns and the statistics of what makes money. And once fans understand the kind of relationship they're in with Hollywood and the studios, the less and less you'll find yourself being perplexed by the decisions that the studios make. When you read articles or you hear news and you find yourself going, it doesn't make any sense. Why would they do that? It doesn't make any sense. If they knew what fans wanted, they would do this because it would make more money because more fans would go to see. You would be less perplexed. You'd go, oh, I get it. Yep, I understand why they're doing it, because it's the business side. Very few fans, like if you're not a cinephile or if you're not working in the industry or if you're not, have a deep interest in it and you're just somebody that's just a movie fan, you work just a regular hardworking 9-to-5 job and you come home and you don't know about really how it all works, it would seem like it doesn't make sense. It'd be like, why would you do that when all these fans want this? And if you give them what they want, it's going to make more money. Well, in theory, but there's a lot of variables to it. There's a lot more moving parts than just the fans are crying for this, give the fans what they want, it'll make tons of money. Not necessarily. In principle, on paper, I get it, but there's a lot more to it than that. There's a lot more things they have to factor in than that. And it's like I read this great article from Blum. who, and I'm paraphrasing this. This is a year or two ago. I've mentioned this before on my show, where he addressed sort of the idea that trailers show so much, right? And again, I'm paraphrasing. I'd have to go back and read it. I think it was Blum. Maybe it was somebody else. And he said, and again, I'm paraphrasing, but he said, well, the reason why a lot of trailers show so much is because it's been proven that the trailers that show this much or this and not this or this, it's a whole marketing psychology around it, make more money. And the trailers that show not as much or leave this part out or leave that out make less money. It's business. I mean, I think we all can agree from a creative standpoint, from a mystery standpoint, less is more. But not according to the stats. You know, it's been proven statistically in patterns that the more you show, the more people go to watch the movie. The more it rents, the more it streams, the more it downloads. You know, so there's a whole, it's not like these decisions are not made arbitrarily. It's a business, folks. These studios have marketing departments. That's all they do every day, all day. That's it. And they watch the trends and the patterns and, you know, and marketing is about manipulating your audience. Walmart does it. Target does it. Walgreens does it. You know, I mean, it's all about manipulating your audience into buying your product. So once we understand that, the less and less the decisions a studio makes become perplexing to you. I mean, not that there aren't some decisions that they make where you go, well, that doesn't make any sense on any ground. Yeah, it's true. I mean, they do. They're still people. But this doesn't surprise me. A Pet Sematary prequel? Well, yeah. 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 But if you don't want to support it, you just don't watch it. Just don't watch it. And if you don't watch it, it doesn't mean you're not a horror fan. It doesn't mean you're not a horror fan. But if you want to watch it, watch it. All right. Super chat did come in here. A couple super chats. What do we got here? I want to make sure I got them both. Yes. Nick, my man. Nick sends in a $5 super chat. Says, Dave, have you seen the Canadian found footage supernatural horror flick from 2011 called Grave Encounters? I have not. Just saw it recently. Not bad. Not bad. Well, I might have to check it out. Chris Baber, my man, sends in a $4.99 super chat and says, they're going to probably talk about the creation of the Micmac burial ground. Just wish they'd use the one in the original as it's unchanged. Yeah. Again, I agree with you 100%. I mean, whenever you do a prequel to a movie, you're telling the origins of whatever has come after it, right? To some degree. There are levels of prequels. There's the Star Wars prequels that had all this mythology and backstory to build. And then there are prequels to horror movies that, you know, can take a movie and tell kind of how we got to where we got to and all that kind of stuff. And I think you're right, Chris. I think you're bang on. I think you're right. I think that is what they're probably going to do. Do we, and again, I have to sort of walk that line between fan, artist, and business. And it's kind of like, do we need it? No. Are fans wanting to know? I don't think so. But is it something that's going to make money? Probably. You know what I mean? Probably. You know, it's like, don't you want to know how it all began? Don't you see? And I have to be honest too and say that, you know, I'm also somebody, you know, full disclosure here. If you've been following me for any length of time, you know that I'm also somebody that revels and loves the mystique and ambiguity of the mystery of certain things. And that doesn't mean that you can use that technique in everything. It doesn't mean that at all. But I believe that you can I really enjoy the style of storytelling, and it's becoming a style now, where you give the audience either through organic exposition. And what I mean by that, the reason why I add organic to it is because, you know, films and scripts are usually, you know, show, don't tell kind of thing, right? That doesn't mean you can't tell at all, but the telling has to feel organic. There has to feel like, well, it's not being, It's not somebody turning to the audience going, oh, by the way, in case you didn't know, which you see sometimes in movies. It's natural, organic exposition, and you're learning certain information through that. Or you're showing the audience, right? And you're learning certain information through the showing. So both techniques can work when they're done well and when they're done right. And I'm a big fan of learning bits and bobs through that. Whether you're showing, don't show me too much. Whether you're telling, don't tell me too much. Just enough that I can fill in the blanks in my own mind. I love that kind of thing. I don't know if it's because I'm 41 and that's what we did through the 80s and the 90s. I don't know if it's, and what you had to do through even the older films, through the 50s, the 60s, the 70s. I don't know if it's because I'm a grumpy, and I'm not old. Like I said, I say I'm 41, but I'm only 41. I'm getting grumpy and I'm becoming the old man, get off my lawn. Get the fuck off my lawn, you damn son of a bitch. I mean, I don't know. Am I becoming that guy? But I'm somebody that really enjoys the ambiguity of things. I mean, when it's appropriate. I mean, you can't be ambiguity. You can't be ambiguous for the sake of it. But I enjoy that. I revel in that. And when I hear Judd talking about, you know, the cemetery and its origins a little bit and what it's all about and all this, I'm like, wow, like there's a mystery. I don't need to then go back and watch how all that came to be. But I recognize, I believe, despite what some of you in the chat room may say, I really believe in the pantheon or in the world of fandom of where we are today. I really believe I'm in the minority. I really do. I see the channels. I see people talking about it. I see you guys. I read, you know, I see the comments. It feels like I'm in a big minority, that the vast majority of people would be thrilled and excited beyond absolute epic belief if they announced a Loomis series on Netflix. You know, Halloween, how Loomis became Loomis and seeing his time at Smith's Grove with 6-year-old Michael and watching all that and all that. I feel that the vast majority of people would be fucking beyond excited for that. And I would be like, I don't want to see that. I don't need to. You keep stripping away the mystique of things, you know? You keep stripping away the ambiguity of the character and the aura of what makes it all work. You know, I don't need to know about Loomis's daughter, you know, like all this stuff. You know what I mean? Now, then you could say, well, Dave, didn't you do a Black Christmas sequel film? Like, aren't you? Yes, I did. But if you know me, you'll know that it's unlikely that I am stripping the ambiguity away. You can make sequels. It's harder to make prequels and keep things ambiguous because the reason why we do prequels is because essentially you're going back to reveal information that was sort of told in the first one, but not to any clear degree. So you go back and you kind of show everybody what they were talking about. So prequels are generally less ambiguous by their nature. Sequels can be ambiguous. You can continue the ambiguity in the sequels while revealing a little bit more because you have to keep pushing the narrative forward, right? You have to keep moving forward. You can't stand still. But you can keep the integrity of the ambiguity there, but only for a certain degree. You can't do that with 10 more movies. You can do it with a sequel. You might be able to do it with one more, but I mean, you can't just like make a 9th movie where it's still incredibly. That's why I've always said that the character of Myers has a shelf life. Anyway. So yes, I did do a Black Christmas sequel, but one of the things that one of the most important parts creatively in the writer's room for myself and Bruce and for the team was the enigma and the mystique and the ambiguity of Billy, while still pushing things forward, needs to remain intact. That's very important, you know. And how we reveal information and what we show through showing and exposition and all that kind of stuff, what we do, there needs to be an aura of mystery around that. You know, it's a very specific style. Some people like it, some people don't. I love that kind of thing. I love it. Love it. I love it. I love that style of storytelling. I love mystery. And I'm not a big fan of just, well, here's how it all works. And it's like, I don't know, but that's me. That's me. I recognize I am in the minority on that. At least I believe I am. You can comment below and let me know your thoughts. Does anybody watch the whole fucking show? I have no idea. Are you watching up to this point? I have no idea. I mean, the chat room is, but who the hell is watching after the fact? Troy Grubb sends in a $2.99 super chat, says, great show today, Dave, making my days better. Well, thank you, man. I really appreciate that. Victor Charlie sends in a $5 super chat, says, DM, Dave McRae, have you been to Martha's Vineyard and walked the Jaws locations? I haven't, but that would be really cool. That would be really cool. With that, how can we get a scary, thrilling shark movie again? Well, I mean, first of all, I think they have to. I think one of the most important things is to. They're almost there, but not quite. And I understand that the likelihood of them using, an animatronic shark in the water is next to nothing. First of all, it's a technological nightmare, and you don't need to. But with a lot of the shark movies I've seen, where the shark is clearly CGI, because some movies will use footage of actual sharks. Even the original Jaws from 1975 used, towards the end of the movie there, they did use certain shots of an actual great white shark, a big shark. And some shark movies then thereafter have also done that. But I've always struggled to believe when the shark is CGI. I can tell it's CGI, the way it moves, the way it turns, it looks computer generated. And that is one thing they have not yet mastered, I think. Like ILM and Weta have mastered, and other, effects companies, but they're sort of the gold standard in Hollywood, especially ILM, of course, have mastered things like dinosaurs, or the Transformer, all the robot, it looks, I can see it. It looks tangible, it looks real, it looks like it's really in the space. There's certain things they have fucking mastered. Sharks, not one of them, at least not to me, not yet. So that's one thing I think they have to do. And another thing I think they have to do is make it very suspenseful. Not take that page out of not showing things, right, so much. Yeah, it's a great discussion. I actually think anyway, that's a whole other tangent I was going to go on there. But I think that's the first thing they got to nail is I got to believe this is a shark and not a shark that looks like it's from Aquaman. I mean, I need to believe this. And there are some shark films where the shark looks better than others, but I still don't think they've mastered it, but that's me. Cody Buchanan says, I like Pet Sematary 2, better than the first one. Ooh, he likes Pet Sematary 2. The one with, what's his face from T2, right? And I thought the Paranormal Activity movies boring, and saw movies boring as well. Well, there you go. There you go, man. And that's okay, Cody. You're entitled to think that. Cody didn't like the Saw movies. He didn't like the Paranormal Activity movies, but he liked Pet Sematary 2. Now, are you talking about Pet Sematary 2, the one from the 90s, or are you talking about the remake from just a couple years ago? Because I just want to be sure on that. But, and there's nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. Let's go to the chat here. Wayne Downey says a Loomis short fan film could be interesting. Yeah, it could be. It could be. It could be about a mysterious death at Smith's Grove. It would only show a short period of time and give away very little. Too bad I'm not a filmmaker. Yeah, I mean, it's not that there's not anything to look. Loomis obviously had a life. He obviously was a doctor prior to Myers. My concern with Loomis, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, and it's not that you can't do it and do it well and prove me wrong, but this is what I think about when I think about that idea, and it's been an idea that a lot of fans have circulated, but this is sort of my problem with that, just to reiterate for those of you that may not know, or if you're new to my channel, is if we go back and do a Loomis backstory, I think it's safe to say that we are led to believe, even though it hasn't been said outright, we sort of get this impression here, that we are led to believe that prior to Michael Myers, Loomis's life was probably pretty ordinary. He's a man of science. He's a psychiatrist, right? His life prior to Michael was probably pretty run-of-the-mill. That doesn't mean that there weren't some interesting characters that he met along the way. But Michael Myers is the one that sort of makes the character of Dr. Loomis question everything he's ever learned. And how do we know that? Because of the speech. Because of the speech. I met this 6-year-old child with this blank, pale, emotionless face. The blackest eyes, the devil's eyes. I spent 8 years trying to reach him, and then another 7 trying to keep him locked up because I realized that what was living behind that boy's eyes was purely and simply evil. You know, and there's so many other things. When you listen to the things he said, this is a man of science. This is a psychiatrist saying this. Loomis clearly has never in his fucking life experienced this before. Ever. This is something on a whole different level. Whole different level. And it needs to remain the pinnacle and the point of no return for Dr. Loomis. If you do a Loomis series, what are you going to do? What are you going to do to make it interesting for the viewer? You're either going to have it about his time with Michael from 63 to 78, which I think continues to destroy the ambiguity, the enigma, and the mystique of Myers. I don't need to know about I don't need to see him sitting in a room staring at a wall looking. I don't need to see that. I don't want to see the day-to-day. This is me talking. I want the mystique to continue to remain. Okay, it's not about Michael. So what is it about? Well, it's about his life before Michael. But then his life before Michael inevitably isn't as interesting as Michael, or as his time with Michael, so why bother doing it? Because you don't want to then create characters that Loomis is dealing with that are somehow even more fucked up than Michael, because Myers is supposed to be the pinnacle, the point that he turns from scientist to, I don't know what's going on here. Do you know what I mean? I don't need to see that. I got everything I needed to know in that first movie. In terms of Michael Myers and Loomis. I get it. I understand it. The dialogue that John Carpenter wrote for Loomis was short, sweet, but very direct. Very on point. And you understand who this guy is and what he's struggling with, no questions asked. I get it. But I believe if you were to go back and do a Loomis series, and I'm ready to be proven wrong. I'm ready to be proven wrong. But it's not something I care about. I already know about this guy. He's a psychiatrist for Smith's Grove. He dealt with some crazy patients. You know, just like he did. And then he met Michael. That's all I care about. That's all I care about. Chris Baber says, practical effects can only save a new Jaws. You may be right, as Dr. Loomis would say. And you may be right. I mean, I don't think, practically, no pun intended, I don't think they would use a mechanical shark. Unless they have figured out a way to make it more practical for the ocean and the salt water and, whatever the case is. I think it would be amazing to see a Jaws movie or a shark movie where they use like practical effects. Oh my God. I think it's too much of a liability. I just don't think they would do it. But I think it'd be cool. It would definitely be cool to see. I don't know. Maybe people can get together a ton of money and do it as a fan film. It would cost way too much money. The shark alone would be like probably fucking hundreds of thousands of dollars. It would cost way too much money. Unless you did it as miniatures. That'd be kind of fun. That'd be kind of fun. Let me see here. Lady Claire says, Cody obviously didn't watch all the Saw movies because there is nothing boring about them. Well, you see, Lady Claire, I don't think that's an accurate statement. I don't think that's accurate. He obviously didn't. Maybe he didn't. You're right. Maybe he didn't. But I think that's a blanket statement because I think it's entirely possible that somebody can watch all the Saw movies and think they're all giant pieces of shit and boring as hell. 100%. Absolutely. So I don't think that's necessarily a fair comment, although I think it's coming from an emotional place for you because you believe, wow, there's nothing, they are absolutely, you know what I mean? And you may be right. Maybe he didn't. But it's important to understand that people will and do have their preferences. Nick sends in a $10 super chat and says, Dave, the way you talk about slowly introducing a villain into its story is the best way imaginable. Should follow how Stephen King did it with his very dark and claustrophobic flick, Storm of the Century. I always think it's important. I think there is enough evidence, enough circumstantial evidence anyway, at the very least, that when you tell stories that keep the mystery intact, it doesn't mean you don't reveal things along the way, but have that slow burn, keep the mystery there. I think there is enough, like I said, at the very least, circumstantial evidence to suggest that most horror fans enjoy that process, enjoy that journey of storytelling, enjoy watching a story like that unfold. There are reasons why slow burn movies generally resonate with audiences and run-of-the-mill horror movies don't. There are specific psychological reasons, on how you are, because what you are doing is you're always manipulating your audience when you're telling a story, but especially when it comes to horror films, you are manipulating you're always manipulating emotions of your audience, depending on, it doesn't matter what genre you're watching. But with horror, you're manipulating fear. You're really diving into the psyche of your audience. And when you can do that slowly, it becomes much more effective. And there's evidence to show that. There's actually scientific evidence to show that. There was a McRae Live I think I did like a year or so ago or whatever, where I think I talked about that. It was and I had like a whole article up, everything, some study over in Europe or something. It was really, really fascinating. They measured the brain waves and the brain activity. It was really, really cool. And I think that kind of storytelling is just effective. I think it's effective. Justin Goddard says, here's to hoping the new Scream won't be a prequel. It's not a prequel. We already know it's a sequel, Justin. It is a sequel, so you are okay. You are okay. You are okay. Frank Riker sends in a $5 super chat, says, Dave, could you name a movie series besides Star Wars that benefited from a prequel movie and added something new? I cannot think of any offhand. Oh, that's a good question. And we're going to try and look at this as objectively as possible. A series. You said a series, right? I think you're right. I don't think there are too many. Prequels are not, generally speaking, a common thing. Really. Maybe you could say Indiana Jones, because we often forget that the Temple of Doom is actually a prequel to Raiders of the Lost Ark. Even though, because Raiders of the Lost Ark, at the beginning it says 1938. At the beginning of Temple of Doom, it says 1935. Although I do understand most people consider, well, now there's Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, but in that original trilogy, people consider Temple of Doom the weakest. I always find that incredibly fascinating. I don't think it's the weakest. I actually think it's one of the better ones. It's my favorite Indiana Jones film. I think Raiders of the Lost Ark is the best Indiana Jones movie, and it's pretty neck and neck for me between Raiders and Temple. But as a kid growing up, and even now, I really love Temple of Doom. Because my thought has always been, if he really is a globetrotting archaeologist, he's going to get himself into all sorts of different kinds of shenanigans and meet all different kinds of women and villains and all that, because he's not always going to be fighting the Nazis. I think, although I really do like The Last Crusade, I think The Last Crusade, parts of The Last Crusade are a little too hammy for me, and very similar to Raiders in the sense that a lot of it takes place in the desert. They're going after a biblical artifact, so to speak. It deals with the Nazis. It's a fun movie. I think a lot of people tend to really like it the best too because it came out in '89. They were of an age where they remember it the most. It might have been their first Indiana Jones movie they ever saw. I think The Last Crusade is very much the H2O of the Indiana Jones franchise. And that's primarily because, of where it's situated sort of in people's lives of when they saw it. I was a huge Indiana Jones fan long before The Last Crusade came out. I mean, I was watching Raiders and Temple in 84 and 5 and 6. I was I was obsessed with it. And I like The Last Crusade. I do. I really do. But I like Raiders and Temple more, I think. And so we could say that, Temple maybe. You know what I mean? You could say that. Jonathan Ball says Annabelle Origins is much better than the original. I've heard that. I haven't seen it, but I've heard it. Again, folks, there's just a lot of things that there's a lot of horror movies that you might have seen that I haven't seen yet. There's also a lot of horror movies that I've probably seen that you haven't even seen. But there's a lot of the more common ones, the mainstream ones that I've yet to see yet because it's not usually first on my list because there's just so many other things going on. But I have heard that. I have seen the original Annabelle and I didn't like it at all. But David Sandberg, I believe, did the sequel, which is a prequel, and I hear that it's better. So that's always good too. That's always good. So yeah, I mean, there's some thoughts there, Frank, but I mean, in the big picture, you are correct. You are right. You are right in the big picture. Big picture. Let's see if we can get somebody here who, hey, Robert Thidoff. Robert, my man, says, Dave, if you only had one choice, which would you prefer? A great new Jaws movie or a great new Halloween movie with Michael Myers? I would probably say Jaws at this point. I think Jaws has, I would just remake Jaws. Or no, not necessarily. I wouldn't necessarily remake Jaws, but I would definitely go back to the roots of its execution in terms of storytelling. I don't know. I'd want to hear a lot of ideas for Jaws. Because Michael Myers is it's been there, done that. We kind of know where this is going. The well is run dry. I'm not saying that kills and ends are not going to be great. I'm just saying beyond what we know is coming down the pipe. It's what are you going to do, right? Jaws, I would love to, I would, if I was Blum or a big Hollywood producer and be Universal, I guess, because I believe they still own the rights to Jaws. I would be show me some ideas, write some, I want to get treatments. I want to get actually, I would want to start with a log line. I would tell a bunch of writers, come up with some ideas and pitch me a log line. And a log line, despite the log line from Variety yesterday in regards to Jeepers Creepers Reborn, which isn't a log line. Log lines are traditionally like a sentence or two that tells you, that's supposed to get you hooked, right? So I would say that. I mean, that's where the line comes from. It's not log lines, it's log line. I would love to be able to kind of just say, write me a log line and pitch that to me. And then I would want to pick the most interesting and be like, I want to know more about that. I want to know more about that. I want to know more about that. And then write me a treatment. And then a treatment, is longer. Or write me a full-on synopsis. I mean, usually you can't really do that unless you've written something. But I would start there, and just kind of have some fun with it that way and see what can be pitched to me. Make the writers really work for it. I think that would be fun. Now, of course, you got to pay these, if you have 5 different people pitching you things, you got to pay those 5 people too. But I think that would be fun. I think that would be fun. I think that'd be interesting. So I'm kind of leaning towards Jaws, for obvious reasons. All right, just a couple more minutes here, and then I have to skedaddle. I'm working on, it's me, Billy, this afternoon, which is a lot of fun. And we are, Bruce was over yesterday evening. He was over for about 5 or 6 hours, and we were going through the assembly edit is essentially done. It's a little bit more than an assembly edit, but essentially that's what it is. And we were going through that, and we are going to be working on the color timing and grading and all that process next month in March. This is very, very exciting. We are very close, and I will say that Bruce and I have agreed on a preliminary release date. I can't tell you what that is yet because it's preliminary and could likely change. But we have looked at the calendar and we have agreed upon a target. Now we just have to reach out to our DP and talk to him. And there's still a lot of work that needs to be done, but it's exciting nonetheless. Joseph Esposito says, Dave, one thing I always wanted to know about you, oh, very cool, is what your favorite movie of all time is. I know that is near impossible to answer, but could you humor me? Sure, yeah, no problem, man. It is impossible to answer, but I think my favorite movie of all time, it's so hard. I remember, well, take this for what it's worth. I remember when I was a teenager, I worked at a movie theater, and this was in the 90s, and this was when the big cineplexes that we know now were sort of first coming around, like, with the stadiums, like the stadium seating and the big, huge screen, because before that, movie theaters were like, you had 6 theaters. It was just the old school kind of theaters, right? And now we have like these big cineplexes that are like, it'll look like, Coliseums have like 15 theaters and stadium seating, and you know what I'm talking about, right? Which is pretty much what theaters are now. They've had been this way for like 20 something years. But when I first started working at a movie theater, I was trained in one of the old theaters. It's called the Britannia 6 in Ottawa, Canada. And because they were still building behind the Britannia 6, they were still building what was called then the Coliseum. And it was like this, it was like, oh my God, And it was amazing. Like now people take it for granted. You walk in, you're like, wow, whatever, this is run. It was incredible. I was incredulous. I mean, I was like just walking in and being like, this is unbelievable. This is a movie theater. You had Baskin Robbins, and you had New York Fries, and you had Pizza Hut, and you had like, an arcade off in the corner. And it's like, what the fuck? This is a theater. It was incredible. Anyways, my first year working there, we had to have obviously name tags, and under our name, we were supposed to put our favorite movie. And it was like a conversation piece. It was an icebreaker for people who wanted to ask or whatever. Now, I don't know if this is my favorite movie, but it's one of my favorite films of all time. And we were just talking about it. I put Raiders of the Lost Ark. I think maybe one of the reasons why I did put Raiders of the Lost Ark and not something like Halloween or Star Wars or whatever, I think it's because for what Raiders of the Lost Ark is, it is the perfect quintessential movie for what that movie is supposed to be. The swashbuckling 1930s serial adventure films brought into, 1980. Of course, it's old now. It's 40 years old now. But I mean, it's almost as old, almost as much time between Raiders to now passed between when those serials from the 30s to when Raiders came out. It's insane. But it's such it doesn't mean it doesn't have certain, but it's so good. It's endless rewatchability. And I think even at that time, I was like, 18 or something. Even at that time, I knew that. And I was like, and I was the first thing I thought of. Do you know what I mean? But I mean, some of my favorite movies are, The Shawshank Redemption, The Green Mile, Halloween, of course, Black Christmas, Touch of Evil, Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, Sunset Boulevard, Rear Window, Rope. Those are some of the old ones. Gaslighting, I think too, is an old film, which I really enjoyed. There's so many. Those are some of my favorites, of course. But there's a lot of great films out there. There's a lot of bad movies too, but there's a lot of good ones. So take that for what you will. Take it with a grain of salt, but those are some of my favorites anyway. Frank Riker sends in a super chat and says, for the sexy prequel hating MFers in the chat. Thank you so much, Frank. Really appreciate that, man. Really, really do appreciate that very much. All right, folks, listen, that is good. Oh, Forrest Gump. The horror fan says Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump's a great movie. Great film. Definitely one of my favorites for sure. Great film. That's going to do it for me for episode 148 of McRae Live. Thank you to my great moderators, of course, Frank Riker, Tabitha Short, Darren Sands, and Chris Baber for doing what you guys do. again, I really do appreciate it. Sincerely, it does not go unnoticed. I see the work you sometimes do in the chat, and I appreciate it very much. I will be back Monday night, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Two Dudes and Some Bullshit. And then, of course, tomorrow night, for those of you that are not part of my Patreon, look out at about maybe, I don't know, what, 9, 10 o'clock, somewhere around there. Look for a Saturday movie night to go up onto my channel. It is a level 2 and 3 Patreon exclusive only live, but after it's done, it does go up onto my channel. So look out for that. That's tomorrow night. And I don't know what movie we're watching yet, but we'll find out later today, I think. All right, folks, take care of yourselves. Have a great rest of your Friday. Have a great weekend if I don't speak to you or talk to you. And yeah, comment below and let me know your thoughts. Pet Sematary Prequel, Paranormal Activity sequel. What do you think? What do you think? Let me know. Alrighty. Cheers.